Before the flood, before even Noah, there was a man who walked between giants and listened to stories straight from the mouth of the first human being created. He lived in a forgotten era, when angels descended from the heavens, took human wives and generated monsters called Nephilims. Amid corruption and violence that covered the earth, there was a just. But he wasn't just fair, he was a friend of God. Who was this man who witnessed the beginnings of humanity and was spared death? Today, you will know the story of the one who walked with the Creator himself. The world in ancient days was not as we know it today. The soil still carried Eden's perfume, but the hearts of men already exhaled another fragrance: pride, desire, ambition. People multiplied in the fertile plains between sacred rivers, and the Creator, even hidden in the eyes of the majority, still whispered in the ears of those who sought him with sincerity. Among them was a silent man. He watched the stars as if he sought in them the memory of something lost. It didn't speak much, but everyone around him knew he was different. Where others were afraid, he had peace. Where violence reigned, he walked in court. This man, a direct descendant of Adam's second son, carried in himself a line of hope. His people said that he walked not only among men, but between worlds, that the Creator visited him, and that he knew truths that others feared hearing. And while the world sank slowly in the darkness, this man walked. But I didn't walk alone. It was common to see him walking at dusk, while the orange sky reflected in the waters of the ancient rivers. But what few knew was that at these times he was not just walking through the earth, he walked in spirit. It was in one of these afternoons that he found an old man with a deep look, whose feet almost no longer touched the floor. That man was Adam. Yes, the first, old, tired, and full of stories. "I saw the garden," said Adam once, "and I heard the voice that echoed between the trees. That voice still calls you?" The wanderer only nodded. I didn't need words. They both knew what it was. For years they talked under the stars. The old Adam spoke of the lost paradise. The wanderer about faith in what would still come. Two worlds in one meeting, a man of origin and another of the future. But not everything was light. Strange signs began to emerge. Men with empty eyes, disturbing dreams, and a new kind of power walking between the tribes. The vigilantes were coming down, and the wanderer of faith felt in the spirit. Something big and dark was about to happen. They came as phantry stars, luminous, beautiful, but carrying secrets. Vigilantes were called heavenly scents they should observe, but never interfere. Only they broke this order. At first the tribes received them with admiration. His eyes shone like fire, his words enchanted. They taught things that men had never imagined: metals, weapons, enchantments, astrology, spells. And what was wisdom became a curse. These beings have taken wives among the daughters of men, and of them were born the Nephilims, giant, violent, insatiable. His footsteps cracked the floor. His voices shook the trees. They not only consumed food, they consumed entire cities. The walker of justice saw everything with sadness. I knew this was not natural. The sky was silent, but he felt in the spirit. A line had been crossed. People came to him asking advice, protection, hope. But what could he do against fallen angels and children of titans? He kept walking. He was still praying, and with each step I felt that a mission was being planted in your heart. Even though the heavens seemed distant, he knew the Creator was watching, and soon it would talk again. One night, when the sky seemed darker than usual, the wanderer awakened from a deep sleep with his body shaking. But it was not a nightmare. It was something much bigger. A voice, clear like thunder and soft like the breeze, spoke to him. It didn't come from outside. It came from inside. "Get up, so I will show you what is to come." Before his eyes, the world has broken down. He saw the earth being torn by the violence of the giants. He saw men bowing before the vigilantes as if they were gods, saw the blood run through the fields, and then saw the waters that came from heaven and depths, swallowing everything. But it also saw something more, an ark, a promise, a preserved lineage. The Creator had chosen someone to register, warn, and prepare the way. It was not a warrior, it was not a king, it was him, the wanderer, he who listened, walked, and waited. From that day he stopped just observing, started writing, to teach, to warn. The prophecy had been given, and the judgment was on its way. The morning after the vision, he woke up in silence. His eyes were deeper, your floor firmer. Those who lived with him noted the change. His son, still young but attentive, approached and asked, "Father, what did you see?" He did not answer immediately. He just raised his eyes to the sky. After a while he murmured, "Time is told." From that day he began to register everything. I wrote on boards, stones, skins. He reported the visions, the warnings, the names of the angels, the hidden sins. The people began to call him crazy. Some feared him, others mocked. But he continued. In the intimacy of the tent, his wife watched everything with regret. She knew that came from above. But I feared for the fate of the family. "What if they come against us?" she asked. He responded with a serenity that did not come from this world. "If the Most High is with me, who can be against me?" The news spread. The man who walked with God was saying that judgment would come. But the people, delivered to pleasures and corruption, laughed. They did not know that that silence of God was only the prelude of thunder. While the man who walked with God wrote his visions, the world around him collapsed. Corruption spread like a disease. The Nephilims, giants of ancient generations, dominated the lands, imposing their cruel laws. Fallen men, the vigilantes, continued to spread their poison, teaching the children of men the forbidden secrets, magic, forge of arms, and even enchantments. Among humans, chaos also grew. The man who walked with God knew that time was short, but still something told him not to give up, and the story of its lineage unfolded. His son, Methuselah, grew rapidly. It was the largest among all, stronger, wiser. But his greatness also made him the target of envy of the most powerful. Meanwhile, the man's woman, increasingly worried, feared for the days to come. And then, in the heart of the mountains, new threats emerged. The vigilantes began to get closer to their land. They knew the words of man and the arrogance of fallen. Angels knew no limits. They wanted more power, more control over humanity, and were willing to destroy everything to reach them. But he had already been warned. Time was shortened. As the days passed, the tension within the tent of the man who walked with God increased. His now more slaughtered wife saw the weight of her husband's face. Fear spread through her soul, and she could not avoid doubts. "Are you sure all this is real?" she questioned in a moment of weakness. He, with a serene look, responded with the same confidence as usual. "Yes, my beloved, I saw with my own eyes. The Lord told me." But despite his conviction, he was also afraid. He knew what would come and could not prevent the course of fate. The idea that his family would be dragged on God's judgment tortured him. Methuselah, his now grown son, showed signs of wanting to question his father's words more. He was about to be a man, and with that arose his own doubts and questions about the future. "Dad, do you really believe the trial will come? Everyone around are mocking us, thinking we're crazy. How can we be right when no one else believes?" Methuselah asked with a look full of confusion. The man was silent, feeling the weight of his son's words, but deep down he knew that the truth would always come to light. Enoch's visions, increasingly intense, began to take shape. He no longer saw scattered images anymore. Now the revelations have become clear and clear. Nephilims were not just monsters of the past. They were getting up again, stronger, and determined to impose their dominion on the earth. In his dreams the sky darkened, and from the clouds a serious and powerful voice said to him, "Enoch, the end approaches. The hearts of men is corrupted. Justice will be done." This message echoed in his mind every moment he was awake. The Lord had shown him the signs, but things were complicated. The fallen angels were approaching more often. He knew they wanted something more than just destruction. They wanted to control the fate of men, to forge new alliances with humanity to change the course of judgment. Meanwhile, in his own land, chaos increased. People began to question even more, and Cain's children, always trying to deceive, began to preach lies and spread doubts about God's ways. Judgment seemed increasingly right, but unbelief still dominated most hearts. Enoch knew that the more time passed, the harder it would be to convince those around him. Now, with the truth at the flower of his skin, Enoch could no longer ignore the fate that awaited him. The man who walked with God knew that his journey was coming to an end. He was the only one who had the courage to face the forces of darkness that hovered on the earth, and his name, Enoch, now echoed more strongly. Among the righteous, he knew it was time to act. As he met with the elders, who respected his wisdom, Enoch began to share the details of his visions, talking clearly about the Nephilims, the fallen angels, and the corruption that plagued the world. Many listened with skepticism, others with fear. "God is preparing for a judgment," Enoch said, looking into the eyes of each of the present. "Our people are lost, but there is hope for those who regret it." His son Methuselah, though still confused, felt the weight of his father's words. He knew something big was coming, but the doubt consumed him. Meanwhile, the children of Cain, bolder, tried to infiltrate the righteous, spreading lies and seeking to protect their own interests. Enoch knew that the confrontation was inevitable, but he was willing to face even the greatest spiritual giants, trusting the word of God. The air was heavy of tension, and Enoch felt as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. The corruption of previous generations had generated an era of despair, and he knew there was no return. The Nephilims were becoming increasingly bold, challenging God's command. But deep in his being, Enoch knew that God was by his side and that he could not fail. In a last meeting with Methuselah, Enoch felt that the moment of truth was approaching. The words he had carried throughout his life now seemed to be more than just wise advice. They were the last chance of salvation for humanity. "Father," Methuselah said with eyes full of anguish, "I know you talk to God, but I can't avoid being afraid of what's to come." Enoch, with peace that only the presence of God could provide, replied, "Fear is not something we must carry. The Lord does not abandon us, Methuselah. If he calls us, it is to be firm. Judgment is coming, but the righteous will be spared." With that, Enoch knew that his mission was accomplished. The confrontation with the fallen angels would be inevitable. He trusted his faith, and the faith of his lineage would be the key to salvation. The sky seemed darker as the final confrontation approached. Enoch knew that there was no time to hesitate. The corruption of the Nephilims, the fallen angels who had disobeyed God's command, was about to be undone. But the price would be high. The whole earth trembled, reflecting the spiritual battle that was locked in the heavens. The sound of the violent wind was like the cry of dark forces. Enoch, with the wisdom he had acquired as he walked with God, gathered all the righteous, who were still left in his lineage, and other groups that followed him. He knew this was the crucial moment. The righteous needed to come together and prepare for what was coming. With a determined look, Enoch went to Methuselah and Noah, who was still young, but already showed a silent force. "The time has come. My children, God's judgment is about to happen. We cannot hesitate. We must do our part." Methuselah, now stronger in his faith, nodded. Noah, with the eyes of those who carried a mission of God, was the first to get up and make the decision. They were ready to face the impossible. The silence took over the air, interrupted only by the distant sound of the thunder that began to roar on the horizon. Enoch knew that the moment of the decision had arrived. The forces of darkness aligned against humanity, and the battle between good and evil was about to materialize. He felt the weight of responsibility for his shoulders, knowing that the future of all creation depended on the firmness of the faith of those who still believed. Noah, now with the strengthened spirit, approached Enoch. His eyes were full of confidence, but also of a reverent fear. "The Lord has chosen us for this task, Father. We are prepared." Enoch looked at him in silence for a moment before answering, "It's not the fear that defines us, Noah, but our faithfulness. Always remember that." Meanwhile, the dark forces approached, with the Nephilims leading the ranks, like a shadow that covered the whole earth. The final confrontation was imminent. The heaven, which was previously dark, now seemed to make way for a ray of light, a promise that the resolution was near. God's children were about to fight last time. The battle for the fate of humanity was about to be fought, and Enoch knew that what happened next would change everything forever. The wind howled hard, and the earth seemed to shake under Enoch's feet and his children. The dark army was before them, and the last battle was about to begin. But amid imminent chaos, something surprising happened. Suddenly the sky opened, and a light of God shone with intensity, cutting the darkness. It was as if God's hand had extended on earth, bringing a sense of supernatural peace. At that moment, Enoch, with a firm and resolute look, rose before the immensity of battle. He was not just fighting for his life, but for the redemption of all mankind. "The Lord is with us," he said, with a force that reverberated in the hearts of the righteous. "Nothing, not even the fallen angels, can separate us from your plan." The Nephilims advanced with fury, but when they were about to take the last line of defense, something impossible happened. God himself sent his messengers to defeat the vigilantes, restoring the order and bringing justice. The kingdom of darkness was shaken, and the children of God, led by Enoch, remained firm, such as a lighthouse of faith and courage. The battle was overcome, but to Enoch the true triumph was in faithfulness to the word of God, which never fails. The light that had previously broken the darkness now dissipated, and heaven returned to his serenity. The battlefield was silent, but the echo of God's victory resounded in the hearts of the righteous. Enoch looked at her children and grandchildren with a quiet smile on her face. The hard way was not over, but the foundation of faith, justice, and obedience to God was solidly built. "God does not fail," said Enoch with a soft but authoritative voice. "He guides us and keeps us, even in the darker times. What we have done here is not just our victory, it is God's victory over the forces of evil." Enoch's legacy, now clear to everyone, was not only in his walk with God, but in his example of unshakable faith. He had been taken alive, but his spirit would remain with the righteous, with those who chose to walk for the truth, even in adversity. While the descendants of Enoch, including Noah, prepared for the future, knew that their mission was just beginning. The flood approached, but the promise of salvation was guaranteed to those who, like Enoch, followed God's will. The story of Enoch shows us an undeniable truth. When we walk with God, He guides us even at the darker moments. Enoch's faith not only led him to be led by God in a miraculous way, but also served as an example that regardless of the difficulties we face, obedience and confidence in God keep us firm. He walked with God in times of corruption, but his life teaches us that even in chaos, the presence of God is our refuge. Now we want to know, how have you lived your walk with God? Have you completely trusted you, even when things look uncertain? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your story of faith. Don't forget to enjoy the video and share with your friends who need this message of faith. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe to more powerful Bible stories that will strengthen your faith and inspire you to follow the footsteps of the great men and women of God. And if you liked this story, watch our next video where we will explore more about the legacy of the great biblical characters and how they can inspire their path of faith. May God bless your journey.